Welcome to episode 7 of It's a Long Road, the Rambo series podcast. I'm very excited to be here today, of course, talking about First Blood. And with me, we have another special guest host from a great podcast called 60 Minutes With. It's Dave Robinson. And would I presume, Dave, that you are like the CEO of this podcast network?
Yeah, I guess you would call me that, the big boss. I think the rest of the team have called me other names behind my back, but yeah, I'll take the CEO.
Dave, welcome to the show. First, before we get into some of your history with Rambo and Sly, let's talk a bit about your network. What is it? I notice you have like a team of people, and one of them actually, Alan, he actually guest hosted on another podcast I have called The Worst of the Best, and we covered the album Operation Mindcrime from Queensryche. That was an episode we did on that. I don't know if he listens to this show necessarily. I don't know, but he definitely listened to the episode he was on with Worst of the Best and a few of those episodes. And I've listened to him on your network covering the Metallica. He did some Metallica stuff on your. So this is an interesting network because you guys cover, that's the thing, you guys cover movies, music, video games?
We do, yeah. I mean, I started podcasting 10 years ago next month now.
Wow.
2012 in a show called 80s Picture House, which by its name, you might imagine we covered movies and music from the 1980s. And that ran from 2012 to 2017. And part of that, we were doing interview shows as well as talking about the movies and the music. And I really enjoyed the interview shows. So I thought, it got to 2014. And I thought, well, I don't want to be constricted by the 1980s. So I'll start another podcast just with the intention of it being me interviewing people for an hour. Hence why I called it 60 Minutes With. It's just morphed over the last, 8 years now into, I think we've got like about 10 members of the team. Then as well as the interview shows we do. Yeah, we talk about movies, music, video games. I think we've got out of the 440 something episodes, about 150 interview shows. So we still do a lot of those. I had to sort of rebrand a couple of years ago from 60 Minutes With and just change it to 60MW.
Right.
Because you wouldn't believe, Ryan, the amount of emails that we were getting. People thought we were the American and Australian TV show, 60 Minutes. And we were getting so many angry emails from people going, this is ridiculous what you said on your show the other week. And I'm going, we're a podcast based in Wales. You've got us mixed up. So I had to shorten it and sort of rebrand as 60MW. That was causing loads of confusions. Plus, I don't think any of our episodes are actually 60 minutes. So
that's fine. No, that's great. I did know you did that brand name change, and I didn't realize it was because of the confusion. Now, I will admit, like, when I first saw it, because I'm from Canada and very familiar with the TV show, I mean, but it didn't take a genius. Like, let's just be honest, Dave. There's a lot of not very smart people out there. Like,
that's right.
You can say the word 60 minutes and not always have to say it's regarding a TV show. Anyways, it's an hour long. That's all that means. Yeah.
The thing was, Ryan, as well, they were emailing us through the contact section on our website. So they'd been to the website and they could see what was on there, and they still thought it was a TV show. So
Middle America, we love you. Okay. I just offended half of my listenership. Okay. On your 60 Minutes page, you said you wore a tuxedo September 7th, 2019, and you met a very special person. So what was the event? Why were you wearing a tuxedo, and who did you meet?
There's a firm over here called An Experience With. It's basically a meet and greet with different people, and they've done them with the likes of Mel Gibson, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and they did one with Sylvester Stallone. There's a big blog post on the website all about my history with Sly and everything, and there's been a couple of times when I've got literally within touching distance of him, but then it all fell apart. So through a series of mishaps, it got to, I think it was it's late 2019, if I remember rightly. And it's not cheap. It's not cheap. I thought I just melted my credit card. And I thought this is like a once in a lifetime chance to see Sly up close, listen to him, get involved in the Q&A, have a photograph with him. So yeah, I actually went and did it, but you have to get dressed up. It is a proper, as we say over here, a penguin suit appearance. You know, you put the tux on and the bow tie and everything, and you have a posh meal beforehand. And then, yeah, it all climaxes, if you pay the right amount, of course, that you get to meet him and have your photograph with him. So I did. And it was really quick. I was expecting it to be quick. You know, you're taken into the room. There he is. Shake hands, say hi, get your photograph taken with him, and next. But yeah, I got my photograph. I put my arm around him, and he is, I mean, this was what, 2019. It was as though I'd put my arm around a statue. He's made out of stone, right? He was like really still pumped, and he's in really good shape.
That's amazing. He would have been about 72 then.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Isn't it crazy? It really is. He definitely looks after himself. He puts the work in, though. He does put the work into keeping that shape.
Yeah. That's fantastic that you got to meet your cinematic hero.
I still can't believe it all these years later.
That's fantastic. I've already made peace with the fact that I'll never speak or talk to him or meet him, but that's okay. That's okay. And like you said, you had
Never say never. Never say never.
I appreciate that. It's okay. I'm okay with it. It's not in the sense of like woe is me, but it's okay. I'm one person out of 7 billion, right? So is he. That's really hard if you think about just to get to meet somebody in this big planet.
Yeah.
And okay. So you met your screen hero. You say he's your screen hero. So I suspect you have been a fan of his movies and followed his career for many years.
For me, with Sly, it began in 1978. So I was 13 then. And before then, my dad had made me into a cinephile by then, which began when I was 10 years old, and he took me to watch Jaws, which I'm sure I was a bit too young to watch, really. I think he just took me because he wanted to go and watch it.
Sure.
But I was obsessed with films from that day onwards. He brought me up watching his hero, Clint Eastwood. So I was watching loads of Eastwood films, again, probably before I should have, age-wise. And then in 1978, I was in... there was a film club opened at school. So I joined it because I was really into films by then. And they were showing the likes of, they showed One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Picnic at Hanging Rock, arty films in a way.
Right.
And you never knew what it was going to be. And I got there one evening and there was this film called Rocky that they were showing. Never heard of it, didn't know anything. I came out of there, Ryan, and I knew I'd got my cinematic hero. And my dad's, and I still love Clint Eastwood, obviously. But I discovered my own in Sly. And from then on, that was it. I was just like watching every Sly film that came out. And when I became old enough, I'd go to the cinema and watch them. And here I am, like in 2022, still obsessed with Sylvester Stallone. And thankfully, still making films that we can go and watch.
It's crazy that he still has a career. I mean, 75, how many 75-year-old actors do we know today? Between 70 and 80, or even between 65 and 80. That we're still clamoring for new material from. Like, we really got to see something from that individual. And I hate to say that ageism is real in Hollywood, but just the idea that any of our screen heroes or even musical artists that we're still clamoring and they're still able and willing and still performing at that senior citizen age.
It is. It's really incredible. And by his own admission, he's had a roller coaster career. He's had ups and downs.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
The late 90s, early 2000s were not very kind to him.
But they're fun to talk about on podcasts.
Oh, wow. Aren't they just? And again, fair play to him. He never gave up. He just never gave up. And here he is, still making these awesome films.
One of those awesome films, of course, is 1982's First Blood. What was your thoughts on that film when you first saw it? You must have been old enough maybe to even see it in the theaters, or just barely? I did go to into the cinema and watch it. Yeah, it was great. And again, here he was, my hero. And this was... For me, it is the beginning of it. Well, the whole 80s, the action hero decade was the 80s, and this was the genesis, especially for Sly. And yeah, I loved it. And then when it came out on VHS, sat with my dad, and we watched it. I don't know, way into double figures on VHS together. It was just so good. Sly is a really underrated actor, and this is one of those films that you can point to and go, look. I mean, people take the mickey out of him, but you go, look, he's a really, really good actor. And it definitely shows in this. He is a good actor. And I would say every actor that, quote unquote, many people think are just good actors. I don't know, name whatever actor that. I think what it is, honestly, is because he has muscles and he has a bit of a slurred speech. I think, honestly, the public and critics have actually been a bully to him.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Because every actor that I've ever known or seen has crappy movies. Every actor.
Oh, yeah.
But they don't get bullied the way Sly does. And it's an interesting concept, and maybe I'm just discovering right now talking to you, but the idea that he is bullied because of his slur. And I think, honestly, Hollywood, a lot of Hollywood elite are jealous of Sly because Sly has basically taken care of himself. He's made his own career with his own, he's written himself into Hollywood. And I think some people, look at Brad Pitt. I love Brad Pitt films, but has Brad Pitt ever written a character or written a film?
Well, this is it. When you think, that's a really good point. When you think of what Sly has written, as well as the characters he's put onto the screen, he's so multi-talented which again, could be jealousy with a lot of people. And that comes out by just verbally and writing these bullying articles about him because they can't do what he can do.
How excited are you for his TV expedition he's doing right now with Taylor Sheridan, King of Tulsa, or Tulsa King, or whatever it's called?
Yeah. I'm not a huge TV watching person. We watch at least a film a day. So it's not too often we dip into TV, okay. But obviously if Sly's in it, I'm going to watch it. There's no way I'm not going to watch anything that Sly's in. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Higher up on my anticipation list is definitely Samaritan. With
I'm nervous. I'm nervous.
Are you really?
Yeah.
What do you think might happen? What is it that you're nervous about? What do you hope doesn't happen that you might be nervous about?
That it's not Escape Plan 2 or 3.
Escape Plan 2 especially, that was pretty bad. Escape Plan 3 is better than 2, but then you couldn't really get much worse, could you?
At the time of this recording, we've already recorded a review of Escape Plan 3, myself and Doug and Craig, and that will be released shortly.
I look forward to that.
Yeah, we close up our trilogy of the Escape Plan trilogy. All right, well, let's roll right into it. You haven't heard the episode yet, of course, but the last episode that we recorded was myself and Adrian from the Arcade Attack podcast. We ended with Rambo putting his knife to the throat of Sheriff Teasel. This is where, of course, Rambo says, "I'll give you a war that you'll never forget, and you'll let it go. Let me go, or leave it alone, or drop it," whatever the exact dialogue was. And, of course, Teasel falls to the forest floor and does Brian Dennehy does an amazing job acting there of that kind of cry, the stress cry that he does then. Do you want to share your feelings on Brian Dennehy overall in this film?
I think he is brilliant in it. I'm a fan of him anyway from his work. Recently rewatched Effects and Effects 2 that he's in as well. He brings a certain gravitas to everything that he's in, and he's always very committed to everything that he does. He's a really good Teasel in this because every time I watch it, and because, we've both watched it enough times that everything that's going to happen and what they're going to say. But every time I watch it, I still love hating him because he just winds me up every time. Everything that he's doing because he's so full of himself and he thinks he's more than he is. And I mean, that is a sign of a good actor when still all these viewings later, he elicits these emotions from you.
He's fantastic. His performance, I mean, like you, I'm watching this again for the umpteenth time, but now watching this like we were doing with the Rocky films and my other podcast, just watching the scene by scene and kind of dissecting what's going on and kind of like a slow watch, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and every time he's on screen, he just pops. There's something about the way he clips his words, the way he enunciates things. And Brian Dennehy, the more I watch this film, he should have been nominated for an Oscar for a supporting role at the very least.
Definitely. And one of the things, because I rewatched First Blood again the other day, and then, of course, he's got the commentary tracks on. And I was listening to Sly talk about him, and he was saying that as Teasel, he was given quite a few opportunities just to improvise. And the scene that we're going to get to is one of those where he could improvise a little bit. The skill to have that where you can go off script and improvise and stay in character and still deliver everything that's needed and more is, I know I couldn't do it, that's for sure. Which is why I'm not on the screen in any big films, I guess.
No, neither am I. It would be kind of fun. I've sort of like dreamed of this. You ever watch Star Trek?
Yes. Yeah, I love Star Trek.
Yeah, I love it too. So there's the holodeck, of course. And I've always loved the idea of like, if I could have my own holodeck, so there's no real audience, but then put myself, like I'd create a holodeck program where I'm on the set of a movie and I could play the role of whatever movie I want. I'm Rocky, I'm Rambo, whatever it is. And then, I know this is really meta, but I would have it so I'm on the set, but nobody would criticize my acting, but I would give it my best. And then I would watch the final film as it would have been filmed and shown to critics and see how I am in it, just to see if I could pull off any kind of acting job. And I know I wouldn't, but it would be kind of a fun thought experiment, or kind of just to see what you would look like in a film if it was done properly on a proper budget, but how your role would actually like, oof, Ryan, you're bad. But it'd be fun to watch though, I think.
That's awesome. What a great idea. Yeah, I'd love to do that as well. That would be so much fun.
I think we'll be dead by the time holodecks are around. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go now. The next scene, of course, is the world is gathering in Hope, Washington, obviously Hope, British Columbia, and it's really crazy to see all the people hustling and bustling around. It's amazing how many people are on site right now.
Back. Come on. Get back. Move back, you guys. Move back. We'll be all right. We have some kind of fun. What's happening? How bad is the situation? Captain, we need some kind of...
Well, a good thing to come out of this mess is the business they're doing in town. Reporters are drinking the place dry. You look like you're ready to kill over, Will.
So we have this captain, I forget his name in the movie. He's probably, I think he's state police.
Yeah.
And in the book, he actually had a much bigger role in the film. If I remember correct, I was sorry, in the book, he had a much bigger role than he does in the film. But he's state police. So I love how even as state police, he seems to know Will, first name basis. And, but what we're seeing before this captain enters the tent where Teasel's being treated for his injuries is just a variety of people. There's just, you got ambulances, and we see the cops that Rambo has maimed, not killed, being put into ambulances. So we are seeing that officially Rambo hasn't killed anybody. Because even I think when people first watch this film, I don't think they're too sure. I don't think it's quite obvious when you first watch. It's not till multiple viewings and chatter about the film after the film came out that people are really realizing that Rambo, other than Galt, it never effectively killed, or purposely so, never kills anybody. But they're showing you right here the cops are being put into on stretchers, and they're being treated. Will's being treated here. Do you remember when you first saw it? Did you actually walk away thinking nobody was killed?
I don't think I did. If I remember rightly, I thought there was quite a few deaths from that first viewing, which is some clever filmmaking. When you go back to these rewatches and you go, no, I mean, there was Galt, which you could argue it was an accidental death. He didn't purposely kill him. But apart from that, well, unless you're going to include the dogs, of course, no people were. And yeah, I think that's a really good point that people that have just watched it maybe the once would go, oh yeah, that's a violent film, all those people that died in it, when they don't. Which is weird because you get to this point of the film, and like you say, when the state police and it walks in and we've seen outside, and it's full of all those ambulances, and there's the National Guard and there's reporters, and there's getting on. There must be over 100 people out there. It's bedlam out there. And this is for one guy. This is one guy that they're after. Already there's people out there thinking, yeah, we could be up against it. Teasel doesn't, of course, because he thinks he can beat him single-handedly.
Yeah, there is a lot of support here. I will give them credit that they're able to. I know it's a film, but even still, there's a lot of activity for one. Like I said, one person. He's only been out of jail for maybe 4 hours.
It's not been long, has it?
5 hours.
And all of that, yeah. All of the people that we've just seen have already been contacted and said, right, get over here. And they've converted into this one place because of this one guy.
And the captain actually mumbles to himself, hey, well, at least the small town businesses are booming to feed all these people.
Yeah, there's always a plus side to everything.
All right. Yeah, so Rambo, he might not have got something to eat, but everyone else is.
Yeah.
Why don't you go home? It's my problem now.
Your problem. Listen, Dave, don't give me any of your horse shit about jurisdiction in this one, you understand?
Would you like me to step outside?
Just finish up what you're doing.
So there's a guy fixing him, and that's who was speaking there. Should I go outside while you guys are arguing with each other? Just finish what you're doing.
Yeah. It's again, Teasel, he's not going to give up, is he?
No.
He wants him. He doesn't want anybody else involved. He's angry that all these people have been called in because he wants to settle it. Well, he does at one point. He sort of he gives a lame apology later on in the film that, he could have caused this, but he's just so angry and wants all of this sorted himself and wants to take all the acclaim for it.
But I find his behavior here a little bit. The last episode ended with him. He just had the knife at his throat, and he knew at that moment this young vet could have gotten him right there.
You would give up, wouldn't you? At that point, you'd go, okay, I will call in the National Guard and the state police and as many people as I can. He's just so hard-headed that he won't admit to himself that he's not going to win.
Well, that's what I don't understand, because we saw the real Will Teasel in that moment, because there's no one around, no cameras, no state troopers or National Guard. He collapsed to the ground and cried.
Yeah, there is that side to him, but he just won't let it out unless in moments like that when there's nobody to see it.
So it's just interesting that it just happened, but now he's kind of back. I'm back and I want this guy.
Yeah.
Don't give me crap about that jurisdiction there. I'm going to take this guy out on my own.
He would go out with a gun by himself if you couldn't just chase him. I think he'd like that.
Well, he sort of does at the end, I guess.
Well, yeah, that's true.
So what we are going to hear here, folks, is a reporter. I love this news report. So just listen to this report and picture you're at home listening to this report. I think it's a great report. It's just kind of funny.
Somewhere in this rugged mountain countryside, possibly above the snow line, shrouded in mist, the fugitive John Rambo is hiding. Units of the state police, along with local members of the National Guard, are now being mobilized. What still remains unexplained by local authorities is just how and where the former Green Beret came into possession of the weapons with which he allegedly killed one deputy sheriff and tried to kill 6 others. Only their skilled training and police enforcement techniques saved their lives. And word now is that the fugitive will be in custody in a matter of hours.
I love the media spin, even back in 1982.
Nothing much changes in that way. I mean, now there'd be how many different TV stations would be there now? How many people would be there with their cell phones and streaming it live to social media? It'd be such a different thing.
But I love how they were saying too, or the media was saying, we don't know how Rambo got in possession of this weapon, and he tried to kill 6 other officers, but failed. And the only reason why they failed was because the training, the techniques of these local sheriff police guys, that's how these guys are still alive. What a great spin.
It is, isn't it? It is, yeah. Like you said, nothing much changes. It's still, don't believe everything you see on TV.
It is ridiculous. Maybe it's just for the viewer here of this movie to get that kind of chuckle, but it really is a joke. The news media, they give whatever spin they want to give to the public. So it's kind of these half-truths. Yes, there's a fugitive out there, but again, in this narrative, they're trying to tell the public, oh, everything's fine. He's going to be caught in a few hours, and don't worry, the professionals are on this.
Yeah, we've got the upper hand. Nothing to worry about. Go about your business. He'll be caught in the next hour.
And I love how he says, possibly above the snow line. What does that matter?
Yeah.
I love that little shrouded in mist. He's like giving some sort of like Ernest Hemingway news report.
Oh, yeah, giving a very descriptive report there of what's happening around him.
So now the guy with the busted nose is coming in, and the broken hand from the fight at the police station. So this individual, I forget his name. We're going to hear it shortly here, but he's the one that was actually in the forest. He got his nose broken. I think the actor got his nose broken in real life, apparently.
Yeah.
And so he's about to come in and talk to Will in the tent now.
Maps, Will.
Willard. Sorry, he just gave Teasel some maps. And now he's about to say, Will, there's something I think you ought to know.
Something I think you ought to know.
Talk to you later, okay?
What is it, Lester? What is it? For Christ's sake, spit it out.
Oh, well, I was just talking to Mitch, and he was saying that Galt and a couple of deputies were a little hard on the guy.
Assholes.
Doesn't make one goddamn bit of difference, Dave, and you know it. Look, if one of my deputies gets out of line with a prisoner, then the prisoner comes to me with it. And if I find out it's like he says, I kicked the deputy's ass. Me. The law. That's the way it's got to be. People start fucking around with the law and all hell breaks loose.
This is a very telling little moment here. It also reminds the audience, and it should remind us too, and I didn't quite catch it until seeing it again for this podcast, was that Will was never around with the mistreatment. He actually was physically not aware of it.
He was upstairs, wasn't he? He wasn't down where it was all happening. Yeah, he never saw anything that went on. It was Galt was the main guy doing most of the pushing with Rambo.
And it essentially was Galt. And so you could argue that maybe this kind of behavior has never really happened. This is a small town. I mean, how often have they actually taken on drifters or vagrants as they've seen it who've done any kind of behavior like Rambo? Like Rambo's the one guy, right? He's the one guy. And
oh, yeah.
So we know too that Galt was also a vet as well. For whatever reason, I think Galt is like Will Teasel off medication type. Like he just went off, right away. There was he was a bully, an a-hole right away. Teasel might have been, aware of Galt's predisposition to be a jerk, but he's never seen it before. Maybe this has never happened before. And so he was wholly unaware that Galt was just having a heyday with the prisoner down there. In the 80s, nobody told on Galt. Nobody went to Teasel because they knew they were friends. They knew they were best friends. So nobody went to Teasel and said, look, what's going on down here? Like, they did turn their back. It was a crime of omission by not doing anything about it. they let it happen, these other guys. But Will himself never saw it.
He didn't see it. And it's interesting to think that if Rambo had decided not to have broken out like he did, and if he went and had done as Will has just said, and went to Will and said, look, Galt's just been, kicking my ass here. What are you going to do about it? Do you think Will would have done anything? Because Will obviously doesn't like Rambo anyway, because of what's happened previously and him pulling him up for basically nothing. Would he have looked into it, or would he have gone, that's my friend you're talking about? He wouldn't do that.
Here's the thing. I think Will is trying to do things by the book. And he even says that here, like, if you start messing around with the law, things get messed up. Like, that's just not how it works. If a deputy is mistreating a prisoner, I will kick his ass. And I actually believe it. I don't think Will would have allowed that hosing and the dry shave. I think it was these guys, the cat is away, so the mouse come out to play. I think Will does control the officers down there, but he can only be at one place at one time. I think they got carried away. And I think if Will actually had come down, he would have said, what are you guys doing? Let's just get him cleaned up. Let's go. Stop messing around. I think he would have done that. Now, would he have fired Galt? No. I mean, 1982, Will Teasel wouldn't have fired Galt. I think he would have stopped Galt from, I don't think that behavior down there would have happened in Will's presence. I really don't.
It's interesting, isn't it? Just that one decision of Will not being there when it happened, of just being somewhere else, and how everybody's lives would have been just so different to what happens after that.
And that's why Lester shares what he shares, and Will acts defensive in front of the state trooper captain, because he's realizing here that he has lost control of his own department. So it's a combination. It is his fault, but he's the one that he's the one that brought the fox into the hen house.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's all on him for that.
So it's a combination of he lost control of his own sheriff, and he's lost control of the situation. But it also just fuels his anger and passion to get Rambo. So it's just a dog chasing his tail situation.
It is. Yeah, and just getting ever faster as he carries on chasing it.
Now, of course, classic moment coming up here. Sheriff is about to ask, whatever possessed God in heaven to make a man like Rambo? Because he's saying, like, this individual, with the DNA that's in him, this man is created, plopped down on earth. Like, why would God produce such a creature to give him such, he's given the worst day of his life. I love this moment.
Oh, yes.
Possessed God in heaven to make a man like Rambo.
God didn't make Rambo. I made him.
Who the hell are you?
Sam Trotman. Colonel Samuel Trotman.
Great introduction of the character, Colonel Samuel Trotman. Of course, David Morrell said, and I don't know of course, I think you heard that interview I gave to...
Yes, yeah, great interview.
David said in that interview that Sam is the moniker for Uncle Sam. Colonel Troutman is the representation of the America military personified through this character. That's the idea, is that he is pro-military, pro-America. This is your typical, this is a military man here. Let's talk about Richard Crenna a little bit. So both Brian Dennehy and Richard Crenna, rest in peace to both these great actors. Richard Crenna, at the time, he had 1 day's notice. This was like his first day of filming. And he came in literally got flown and dropped in and said, you're going to play Colonel Troutman. Because, as you know, the original actor who was on set, I think he was on set for 1 day before he quit, was Kirk Douglas. Famous actor, Kirk Douglas. Did you hear why Kirk Douglas left the set?
I did. He wanted the part of Troutman to be very different to what it is now. And in effect, he wanted the movie to end that he was Rambo. The ending that he wanted. He did a lot of script changes, apparently, which Sly didn't agree with, and obviously the other filmmakers didn't agree with. He wanted it to be a completely different film and focus on him playing Troutman, and nobody else wanted him to. So he walked, didn't he? Hence why Richard Crenna had to come in at literally the last minute, or as near as damn it.
I'm just going to quickly Google how old Kirk Douglas would have been at the time of this film.
65 when filming. When they filmed it at the back end of 81, he was 65.
Oh, there you go. You already knew the answer. Good for you. You didn't even have to Google that.
And Crenna was 55.
Oh, thank you. Boy, you're the best co-host I've ever had. Shame on all the other past co-hosts. I've always had to Google the ages. Thank you. I love knowing the ages. I don't know why, but I love knowing the ages.
Yeah.
You're the same
definitely.
Way?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I always like to know the ages of them. I don't know why, but that's why I've got it in front of me. I had to know what age they were.
Boy, Kirk Douglas only died a couple of years ago.
He was over 100, wasn't he? Or was he?
Wow.
Actually 100, yeah. He had good genes in him, that's for sure.
But yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, he was born in 1916. He was 104 almost. Boy, what in the world? That is crazy. All right, well, good to you. Good for you, Kirk, but not to speak ill of the dead. And I understand, look, in 1982, yeah, he was 65, already had a huge career in Hollywood. What I find interesting is both, I understand that might have been his personality or his, like, look at me, I'm this big-time actor coming on this small-time film. Maybe it's how he saw it. I find it odd that he would be so adamant about changing the story so much, because did he do that on Spartacus? Dude, this is the film you got hired for. Why are you shouldn't have agreed to do the film, because changing the script, you can't do that. I mean, I'm not a movie guy. I don't work on films, but my understanding is you can't just go in to change the script. They've set designs, costume pieces, filming locations, all these things have been taken care of because of the script. Like, you can't just change the storyline. You can't just change it into something else.
Yeah, and I don't know if that was a case of him thinking he was still the huge movie star that he was years previous. He was still a movie star, but not as big as he used to be. But maybe in his mind he thought he was, and he'd still got the power to do things like that, and he could come in and change the script as he wanted to. And as he found out, no, he couldn't, which ultimately I think was good for the film and as his viewers to watch it, because then Richard Crenna came in.
Well, before Richard Crenna, it was going to be Rock Hudson.
He had open heart surgery, so he couldn't play Troutman.
It's weird how things work out like that, because, you know, we say it now, like, nobody would have been better. And I think Sly was legitimately disappointed, because I would have suspected that Sly would have, at the time in 82, would have been thrilled to have Kirk Douglas on the movie, and would have been a great for the film. It would have been interesting to see Kirk Douglas play the role as written, and just to see that performance. Like, if he had brought his performance, I will do whatever the script says, performance. It's too bad we never saw that. I love Richard Crenna's performance, but it would have been interesting to see a Kirk Douglas performance in this film.
Yeah, it would definitely have been interesting to see what he did with it. If he'd have stuck to the script and gone as it was, how he would have made Troutman his own. There was no photographs taken, was there, of him? All there is just this one promo piece of artwork that you can see of Kirk Douglas as Troutman.
Yes.
The promo poster that was done before the film. He looks good in it. When you see him, you think, yeah, he looks good. He looks good.
Yeah.
I mean, nowadays there'd be videos and photographs. There'd be all sorts everywhere about him, even if he was on set for just a few hours. But all we've got now is just this one piece of promo artwork.
But I'm surprised he even went that far. Yeah, they actually had, that's how committed to the role he was at one point, that they were starting to create the promo work for the movie. Yeah. And he was kind of, I think his picture was bigger almost than Sly's.
He would have seen the script and agreed to it and went, yeah, I want to be Troutman in this.
Yeah,
and then, yeah, after he'd agreed to the script, then go, no, I want to change it. So,
you know why? Again, honestly, it's this undermining of Sly.
Yeah, it is. It is. And Sly hadn't got the power that he did later in the 80s, that he could oversee as much as well. So he was being undermined more, where later on in his career, you know, and by his own admission, Sly's ego went a bit out of control. I don't think anybody would try to have undermined him.
Well, you know, he would talk about ego. That's what Kirk Douglas was doing. I mean, ego was just part of being in Hollywood, you know.
Yeah.
I hate how, again, Sly gets slammed for his ego, but my goodness, 65-year-old Kirk had ego. I quit. You know, I'm not going to have it my way. I'm out of here. But he's a screen legend that nobody ever talks about, his little hissy fit. You know, people all have egos in Hollywood. You can't be a alpha male type or female, whatever, movie star, unless you're kind of not used to getting your own way, but you got your own way. You're at the top of the game for a reason.
That's it. With the character of Troutman, with Kirk Douglas gone, of course, Richard Crenna come in. And other names, I mean, the internet, don't believe everything that you read on the internet, but names that have been out there and how true they are, I'm not sure. I haven't triple sourced everything. But you got names like Chris Christopherson.
Right.
You mentioned Rock Hudson, Lee Marvin. And these, I'm going to give you three names. I've not heard of these, but I am in Wales, so I'm presuming these are American.
Yes.
Jackie Mason, Milton Berle, and Charles Nelson Riley.
Okay, I don't know the Charles Nelson one. I think Rock Hudson, sure, maybe. But yeah, I think after Kirk Douglas, all those names you just mentioned, yeah, Richard Crenna. Perfect. Now, he just got off playing a gay doctor in some Broadway show, like just moments before. So apparently his voice was kind of like, Sly tried to say, he didn't want to, you know, be politically incorrect, but he kind of just said it was effeminate. Like he had
Yeah.
Richard Crenna had changed his voice to sound like a gay person may sound in the show that he was producing anyways. That's how that character sounded. So a little bit more feminine, high pitched, voice. And so he came in and started kind of sounding that way. And Sly's like, no, dude, you gotta lower your voice and sound more like a hardened colonel in the military. He's like, oh, sorry, that's how fresh off the boat he was from one project to the other, is what I'm saying. So I think it's kind of funny.
It is. That's a really good example of how, like you said, how close he was between characters, that he needed that little bit of time to transition from one character to the other, who's still carrying this previous character with him, like you said, with this effeminate voice.
Yeah.
And maybe the mannerisms with it. And this will be a really, really niche thing to mention that I'm sure only a few people here in the UK of a certain age will know. But I remember the first time that I watched First Blood, and then Troutman appears and he's framed in the entrance of the tent and he's got the beret and the long raincoat on. There was a situation comedy over here in the 70s called Some Mothers Do Have 'Em. And the main character was called Frank Spencer. And he always wore a beret and a long raincoat like Troutman. And I remember watching it thinking, that's Frank Spencer. And even all these years later, I still get a flash of this character called Frank Spencer. Again, I'm presuming a lot of people listening to this will have no idea who I'm talking about. Google Frank Spencer, you'll see the similarities just in the beret and the raincoat. And that's why I always think of him, even to this day when I watch it.
Well, it's fantastic. I love that kind of stuff. I will. I'm going to do that right after. Okay, what I also love, though, when Colonel Troutman, of course, walks into the tent with that big... I love how the timing of it... like, if he had stopped to get a cup of coffee or, go to the bathroom, he just happens to walk to the entrance of the tent during that great moment with Brian Dennehy's character saying, what God in heaven made. The timing, like, Colonel Troutman must have been, hey, this is a perfect time to make my entrance. What a great line I get to say. Instead of saying, hey, I'm Colonel Troutman, I love that. Yeah. I love those little moments in film where you think of all the things that had to happen for that exact little clever little moment or line of dialogue to happen. I know it's a movie, but thinking in the reality of this universe, the timing of that dialogue, boy, what a clever entrance. Aren't you lucky you got to make that entrance?
Or even to think that Troutman was waiting outside just out of sight and just waiting, hearing what we're saying. And then he heard that and thought, yes, now's the time. I'm going to step into this tent and make my entrance.
Now, he says that I made him. Now, in the book, Troutman and Rambo never met.
Yeah, they're not as friendly, are they? They haven't got the connection that they've got in the film.
No. So in the book, Troutman's a complete stranger to Rambo. Rambo's only connection to him was he was I forget the rank, but he was the leader of Rambo's training, kind of like on site, and you would hear Troutman's voice over the speakers. That's it. They never met. They never had any kind of relationship. And in fact, in the book, Rambo wasn't sure whose side Troutman was on. He knew that Troutman had joined Teasle in the hunt for himself in the book. He felt betrayed as he saw it. He thought he was helping the police. There was no indication in the book that, Rambo didn't know Troutman. There was no relationship.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big difference, isn't it?
But in the movie, we learn that Troutman, of course, made him, that he was an instructor to Rambo right from the boot camp days. But at least for this film, too, we know that, truly that Troutman was there from day one. So he did create Rambo.
He did create him.
And the institution, of course, that he's in charge of. But they also have a personal connection, So when Rambo hears his voice later in the film, he knows very well who's talking.
Yeah. Slight refers to Troutman as Dr. Frankenstein and Rambo as Frankenstein's monster. Which I think is a good analogy.
Perfect analogy.
Look, we're a little busy this morning, Colonel. What can I do for you?
I've come to get my boy.
Your boy?
I recruited him. I trained him. I commanded him in Vietnam for 3 years. I'd say that makes him mine.
I wonder why the Pentagon would send a full-bird colonel down here to handle this.
The Army thought I might be able to help.
Well, I don't know in what way. Rambo's a civilian now. He's my problem.
Boy, Teasle, relax.
Already, they're just rubbing each other the wrong way, aren't they?
Yeah, like, here's a guy who's coming to say, look, your boy, I love that, your boy. Well, yeah, I've been with this guy. His whole military career, I was with him. That makes him mine. Yes, I know he's a civilian right now, but however, I know how he operates. I know how he thinks. You might want to listen to what I have to say. I could offer you some help. Like you say right here, I'm here to help. Mm-hmm. Can I help? And Teasle's like, no. And Colonel Troutman continues with it. He says right here, I don't think you understand, which is an understatement of the year.
That is an understatement. I think with Troutman's training and the man that he is, he within seconds weighs up Teasle and knows exactly the type of guy who he is, the way that he's acting, and from the things that he says. Because of that he's weighed him up so quickly. This is one of the reasons why Troutman then goes on to say a lot of the things he does. almost just like winding Teasle up a little bit and teasing him that going, you're not as good as you think you are. Rambo is who you think that you are. And they have that little sort of wordplay between them.
Keep in mind, too, that Troutman doesn't know what Teasle's been through personally.
Yeah, he doesn't, does he?
We as a viewer know, but you're right. Troutman has sized him up pretty, he's ex-CIA. He's reading Teasle obviously, with all the people he's worked with in the military, he's reading Teasle very clearly here. And he might even know, he might have done some research that he knows Teasle maybe is ex-Korean veteran himself.
Yeah, you think he'd have done his homework before he goes there too. Professional guy that he is.
I don't think you understand. I didn't come here to rescue Rambo from you. I came here to rescue you from him.
So there you go. There's a little line dig there.
Yeah, Will doesn't like that, does he?
Oh, no. He's just so sick and tired of seeing what this guy can do, and now he's hearing it from the guy that trained him. Look at Teasle's face here.
So you think that Teasle just wants to shout, enough already! Enough about this John Rambo. He's not a happy guy at this point.
Well, we all appreciate your concern, Colonel. And we'll try to be extra careful.
I love that. We'll try to be extra careful. Okay, we'll be very careful around him. But Teasle, did you not just see what happened to yourself and 6 of your officers? He manhandled you guys very quickly in short order. Why is he not understanding this?
This is another example of Brian Dennehy's great acting. The expressions on his face. I mean, where you've just paused it there, Ryan. Just the look in his eyes. He's saying so much just with that one look. It's all coming through there. I think that is damn good acting.
I'm just amazed that he allowed any of your posse to live.
Is that right?
Strictly speaking, he slipped up. You're lucky to be breathing.
Now, this is interesting because Troutman's right about what he's saying here. He is surprised that any of these people are alive. Strictly speaking, he slipped up. Now, this is where he's wrong. He almost believes the media coverage in some ways. Strictly speaking, he slipped up. You're lucky to be breathing. Now, he's right about that. You are lucky to be living, not because they slipped up, though. I find this part interesting. He should have assumed that Rambo allowed them to live. This is actually, he's pumping up Rambo to Teasle, and he knows what Rambo's capable of. I'm surprised he didn't put 2 and 2 together saying, look, yeah, you're lucky to be breathing. You're lucky he allowed you to live. Would have been a better line. Because he didn't slip up. He truly just maimed them. So maybe he doesn't know what the injuries are, or doesn't know that they got stabbed with sticks and all this stuff. Like, he just knows that there's a bunch of casualties, physical casualties that aren't dead.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Yeah, I hadn't really thought of it that way, Ryan. The way that Troutman looks at it that way. Because you think with the training that Troutman gave him, it's leave no prisoners behind, kill everybody that's in your way. But then that's in a war situation, isn't it? This was more in a civilian situation.
But he says he slipped up. That means he messed up, that he expected them to be dead. Now, in the book, this is kind of where, maybe it's speaking to the book, because in the book, he kills them. They're dead. So you got this weird, 2 different worlds are colliding here. You get the Rambo in the book.
Yeah, it's a strange, where sort of 2 cross over each other in a strange way, and it's neither, there's a bit of one and then it goes into a bit of the other.
Right, because he goes on to explain later just how tough Rambo is, and of course that great line that's coming up, and I want to hear it, so I don't want to spoil it. So he kind of contradicts himself, because he's like, well, if you go back out there to get him, be prepared for what.
Yeah.
So he's kind of contradicting himself, saying in the future there'll be more casualties, but he let 6 people live. So it's a small thing, but I think they should have just made it say, like, strictly speaking, you're lucky to be breathing. Just leave it at that. Not that Rambo slipped up. That he allowed them to live. I think that would have poked Teasle even more, too.
That's a really good point, yeah. I'm looking at that differently now, Ryan. That is a really good point.
That's just great. Colonel, you came out here to find out why one of your machines blew a gasket.
I love that line. So many great... Everything these 2 say in this scene is just clip-worthy. You're wondering why your machine, something you created, blew a gasket. I love that analogy.
This scene is like a verbal tennis match, isn't it? They're just hitting back and to each other and seeing who's going to come out on top.
Fantastic. I love it.
You don't seem to want to accept the fact that you're dealing with an expert in guerrilla warfare. With a man who's the best. With guns, with knives, with his bare hands.
Now, I love this with his bare hands. We see he almost took the eyes out of Galt in the jailbreak scene. And, of course, he manhandled everyone in that police station with his bare hands. But we get to see... As much as people slight Last Blood, I think if you rewatch that film, if they could CGI long hair on Sly into Last Blood in some sort of like director's cut, put long hair on Sly. I think people would like Last Blood. I swear people would like it more. I really do.
But you should say that because, yeah, with Last Blood, that short hair thing was always a sticking point with me. It shouldn't be. I know it shouldn't be, but it was.
Well, it's like putting a mullet on Rocky. It just wouldn't look good. So, honestly think that's what it was, because what we're hearing here with guns, with knives, and with his bare hands, Rambo Last Blood, he uses, remember that clavicle kill or whatever he did? He pulled up with his bare hands. We see that in, yeah. So we see that Rambo, certainly in Last Blood, and I think that's what people forget, is we actually see what Rambo can do. Something we didn't get from Rambo Part 4 was this stuff, and I have my issues with Part 4. We'll save it for Season 4, but Rambo Last Blood, we actually see what Rambo can do again. I think people forget how much that didn't happen in Part 4. So rewatch Part 4 and watch Part 5, and you tell me which one's more Rambo, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Regarding his ability to kill.
Yeah. With these lines, we've got Teasel and Troutman going at each other with everything that they're saying. It was at this point with my early viewings that Krenner's enunciation of his lines, I found a little bit annoying in my early viewings. But as I've watched it dozens and dozens and dozens of times over the years, it's really grown on me. And I love how he says those lines now. But in the early days, it was one of those little gripes. I didn't like his delivery of the lines.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, I'm glad you're on board now, or I'd have to kick you off the show.
Oh, yeah, I'm well on board with it now.
Okay. Whew.
A man who's been trained to ignore pain, ignore weather, to live off the land, to eat things that'll make a billy goat puke.
Oh, I meant to Google billy goat.
What would make a billy goat puke? That's the thing. I mean, you could Google that, what makes a billy goat puke, and you know that Rambo would eat it. That would be interesting.
I love that idea. Now, a lot of food issues in this film, eh? Rambo's hungry. He would eat things that would make a billy goat puke. I don't think we're going to get to the scene on this episode with you, unfortunately, but the next scene I don't want to talk about because I want to save it regarding his hunting. But the idea that, yeah, that he would eat things that would make a billy goat puke. Yeah, maybe, I don't know. I would have to imagine it would be drinking his own urine, maybe. Like, it'd have to be something like that. That's the idea. Eating bark off a tree or maybe grubs, insects. But I wondered, do billy goats eat like crazy things? Like the idea that even a billy goat would puke. So what is the dietary menu of it?
Yeah, there's a lot of post-podcast searching for people when they've listened to this.
If I was a better podcast, I would have done this research before. I apologize to my listeners. You
don't expect to go Googling what billy goats eat on a Rambo podcast, though, do you?
Well, maybe on this one I should have. But I love that billy goat puke. The way that sounds, billy goat puke. But he says that Rambo to ignore the weather. I'm like, yeah, Troutman, I'm sorry. Rambo got cold. We saw a scene where he was rubbing his arms and he had to get the canvas. And now he found something to make himself a little warmer. But I will say Rambo was cold. He didn't ignore the weather. He actually was quite uncomfortable about that cold.
He feels cold. Yeah, he does.
That's okay. We won't hold it against John Rambo. I don't want him to come after me.
Oh, no.
In Vietnam, his job was to dispose of enemy personnel. To kill. Period. Win by attrition. Well, Rambo was the best.
So Rambo was the best. He was the best at killing, to win by attrition, to do whatever was needed to complete the mission. So we're getting an idea here of his capabilities. And those capabilities will come to fruition a lot more in the second film, but that's what he did.
Yeah, and even though Teasel's been told this, he still doesn't accept it. He's still, no, I don't care about any of that. Even though he's been told all of this by Troutman, he still won't face up to the facts that he's not as good as Rambo.
Well, he lets Troutman spew this stuff off, and there's a part of me, I don't know if it's the actor or the character in this, which makes for great acting, but I feel like Will is soaking some of it in. I feel like there's a part of him that, again, he has seen this. He has seen what Rambo's done to his crew, what he did to him with the knife to his throat, just blindsided him. Could have killed him, but didn't, which is more embarrassing. He made him cry uncle in some ways.
Yeah.
So he's hearing this from Troutman. So it can't not be registering. It has to register to a degree. There has to be a part of him that realizes, okay, I've seen it. Look, he broke out of my sheriff's department, and then he took care of us out there, took care of the hunting dogs, jumped off a cliff, killed one of my guys out of a helicopter, and then he's hearing this resume from Colonel Troutman. There's a part of Will that has to be like, okay, I've stepped in something a little bit, but his pride won't admit it.
Exactly, yeah. Pride. His pride just won't let him admit it. And that's his downfall.
Absolutely. This is probably what's the word I'm looking for? This is a perfect film. I give this film 10 out of 10. It's an A+ film. There's nothing, quote unquote, about this film that I don't love. However, it doesn't mean it's flawless. I know that doesn't make sense, but to me, it's a perfect film, but it's not flawless. Rambo is hunting. And now, it's only been 12 hours. I don't think it's been that long since he first walked into town. He just wanted a bite. Now, he could literally, yes, maybe be starving, but he looked pretty nourished. Let's be honest. He didn't look malnourished. He has eaten before. And in the book, just so you know, listeners, that, again, this town was like the 15th town that he'd been to recently in his travels throughout America that was mistreating him. It was the town that broke him. He said, I've had enough. Yeah. So he's actually been mistreated in other towns. It just happened to be this one. It's like, that's it. I'm done. I'm done being mistreated. And it actually in the book too, he actually ordered food and got food. So the food wasn't the issue. He actually got to eat in the book. He likes greasy burgers, by the way. Okay. So Rambo's about to kill a wild boar and he kills the whole thing and he makes a fire and eats it. Dude, I know you're hungry, but I don't know, maybe you could argue he might think he's going to be out there for a while, so he has to get sustenance now would be the only argument. But I just think it's kind of a funny scene. I don't know, him hunting, like he's been out of food for weeks and weeks or whatever, but it's been a day, and he's already killing a boar.
Yeah, I've looked at it that way, that he thought maybe he's going to have to hide out there for a few days. So do this one kill, stock up on boar, and he's good to last it out until it all dies down a little bit.
Now, in the book, he did eat something, but I was going to say that would have been more reasonable. What he does in the book is actually more reasonable. He kills an owl. He said it wasn't very good meat, but he actually plucked the feathers, cooked it, which is a much more reasonable cooking. But I love how in this movie, Sly's got to kill a boar. It can't be a rabbit or a bird. It's got to be, something half his weight.
Yeah, something big.
Yeah. So he's got his Rambo knife tied to the end of a stick, like a spear, like he's gone full primal here.
Oh, yeah.
So he's carrying the carcass of the part of the pig to his little makeshift camp. And this is the entrance of the mine, I believe.
It is, yeah. He's already set up camp there. He's found a good place to hide out.
So he puts this drum barrel up on a stick. I guess it's to alert if anyone comes near the entrance, it'll crash when it trips or something.
Yeah, a hidden tripwire, which will send that barrel crashing down and he'll be alerted.
They showed that scene, I think, just to indicate to the audience, like, see, he's living off the land. He can be out there forever. You guys, can you last as long as him? It's just showing, I think, what Rambo's capable of doing, that he's already made his home out there. He's good to go for a bit, I think is the idea.
Wouldn't that have been a good opportunity to show him eating something that would have made a billy goat puke?
No, I mean, that looked like a delicious pig.
Yeah, that was fine. They could have backed up Troutman's argument right there.
Now you got us all scared to death. What do you in the Special Forces think I ought to do about your psycho out there?
Let him go.
Do what?
For now. Diffuse the whole situation. Diffuse him. Provide a little gap and let him slip through it. Then put out a nationwide APB. In a couple of weeks, you'll pick him up in Seattle or someplace working in a car wash. There'll be no fight and nobody else will get hurt.
I do my own work.
Okay, this is very interesting. This is actually what Rambo asked.
Yeah, it is.
Leave me alone.
Yeah, just leave him, and all this will die down. They can pick him up later, but no. This was another out for Teasle right here, where he could have said, okay, let's do that. We'll call all of this off. We'll pick him up in a few days, but no, pride again.
I love his response, though, after you heard that resume. Now that you got us all scared, like some sort of bedtime story.
Yeah.
Oh, such great stuff. He just won't give anything to Troutman here.
Oh, nothing.
I don't figure the best way to do that is to close my eyes and hope he gets picked up in Seattle.
Well, if you send your people in there after him, they'll get killed.
We're just a small hick town sheriff's department, Colonel, but we're expected to do our duty, just like our heroes in the Special Forces.
Now, this is interesting here. So he's contradicting himself. He's being defensive. So we're just a small town hick sheriff, but we're expected to do our job, just like the Special Forces. But Teasle, that's exactly what Troutman's doing. He's doing his job. This is now a national event, at very least a state event. National Guard is here. State troopers are here. So everyone is just doing their job. It's gone beyond your purview now. So ironically, your reaction is exactly what other people are doing. They're just doing their job too.
Yeah, but he wants to do his job better than everybody else. And probably instead of everybody else. Just let him do his job.
I don't know why he doesn't understand he can't do it. He's already been proven that he can't take this guy out in the wilderness.
Exactly.
In Special Forces, we teach our people to stay alive in the line of duty.
No shit. I never thought of that.
Sorry, that's great. That is a pretty funny comeback. Trump was like, we train our guys to stay alive. And he's like, yeah, you think you guys want to stay alive out there?
No hesitation with that comeback at all.
And now Trautman's a little bit, I think he's had enough here. This is where he goes on to say, you want a war, you can't win.
Yeah.
You want a war you can't win?
Are you telling me that 200 men against your boy is a no-win situation for us?
You send that many, don't forget one thing.
What?
A good supply of body bags.
So Trautman's had enough. He goes, you want to go out there? Okay, you're going to have casualties. It's on you. I'm done.
It's one of those lines that even the casual fan of First Blood knows off by heart.
It's a beautiful moment.
It is.
And Teasel here is still now he's looking a little bit, okay, well, maybe I'm a little bit hot-headed here because he goes out to talk to Trautman. This is a very telling moment. I think Teasel's bending a little bit here.
Trautman! I don't know which side you're on, Trautman. I still think you came out here just to cover your ass. But if you're serious about taking Rambo out clean, follow me.
All right, so that's where we're going to end. Now, he's partially right. Now, first he says, I don't know which side you're on. That was Rambo's thinking, like we said in the book. Rambo didn't know what side Trautman was on. And even we as a viewer might not be too sure here, really. Yes, I would suspect part of it is the military covering their ass. However, we do learn that Trautman's intention is to do, he is telling the truth. He wants to take Rambo in.
Yeah, he does. But again, that first time viewing, you're not sure 100% about Trautman. Is he really Rambo's friend? Is he not? Like you said, is he there just trying to cover the government's ass on all of this? And I do like during all the films going forward, the way that their relationship progresses. And I'm glad it's part of the film world of Rambo that wasn't, like you said, within the book where they were nowhere near as close as they are.
Now, I know we didn't have an action-packed scene, but boy, we had an acting-packed scene.
I am so pleased that I was on for the introduction of Trautman and Richard Crenna. We got to mention as well, because we're on about Richard Crenna and Trautman, we can't not talk about very, very briefly of how we would later spoof Trautman in Hot Shots Part 2, where he plays Colonel Denton Walters. I mean, Hot Shots Part 2 is, the major Rambo spoof anyway.
Right.
But I remember the first time I was watching that and going, it's Trautman again. So, yeah, he wasn't afraid to spoof himself as Richard Crenna. So good on him for doing that.
It was a funny spoof. I think it angered me a little bit back in the day because I was young. I was a teenager and how dare you and make fun of but now that I'm older and less possessive of my fandom, like, of course, Star Wars gets made fun of, Star Trek, Rambo's going to get spoofed. It's a form of flattery. If you're popular enough to get spoofed. Yeah, absolutely. Well, there you go, Dave. That was your journey on this incredible scene. Well, you actually did luck out with the scene. I was a little bit nervous, and now maybe I feel bad I always say that. I would feel bad for the next guest. Are they going to enjoy what they're watching? But I don't think there's any bad moments in this film. I don't think that's ever an issue in this film.
You can pick any scenes in this, Ryan, and you're going to have a great time chatting about it.
All right, Dave, but before we close this episode, I forgot to read at the beginning of the show an email. If you want to send me an email to the show, it's RamboSeriesPodcast@gmail.com. That again is RamboSeriesPodcast@gmail.com. Or just check the show description. You'll get the email there. Doug from the Rocky Minute Podcast and good friend of the show, good friend in real life. Hopefully I get to meet him one day. He's getting married very soon, by the way. At the time this airs, he's getting married. So wish him all the best. It's a long road, Doug. It's a long road. Well, it's his second marriage. He knows. This is marriage part 2. Hey, I'm on my second marriage too. All right. We love you, Doug. So I asked the question in an episode that we did regarding the shooting that took place from the police at the top of the cliff. You remember that scene there, Dave?
Yes, yeah.
And the question was that illegal firing? Do you have a guess, Dave? Do you think?
Oh, wow. I mean, that's probably not the best question for somebody who lives in the hills of Wales. And
sure.
Guns are just something so foreign to us.
Right.
I'd a pure speculative guess. I'm going to say yes, because they had, for some sort of strange legal reason, I'm betting that they could have found that it was legal.
Okay. So Doug, as you know, is a police officer. He's a sergeant in the police force there in New Jersey. He says, hey, brother, I'm checking in regarding the police firing on Rambo. It's absolutely an illegal shooting.
Ooh,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yes, they think Rambo is responsible for Galt's death, so I'm sure emotions are running hot. That's a good point. But Rambo has his hands up, and he appears to be surrendering. Teasel tells Rambo not to move, and Rambo starts walking backwards, and that's when he fires. Still, firing on someone who has their hands up is a bad look.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, he goes, even more of an offensive example is Galt firing at Rambo dangling from a cliffside. What threat does Rambo pose in that situation? So Galt's crime is worse than Teasel's, in his opinion. Always a pleasure, my friend. Talk soon. So there you go.
I love getting feedback like that. And when questions are put out there and you get the answers from the people that know, I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Doug knows. So Doug says if he was a police officer, let the record state that Doug would not shoot anybody surrendering or on the side of a cliff. That's fair. Keep up the good work, Doug. We do appreciate your service out there, and he's one of the good ones. We love him. All right. So, Dave, that's it. That's the end of the episode.
Nothing is over. Nothing. You just don't turn it off.